Everybody, my name is Joyce Wells. I'm owner of 5 network and action groups, 4 in Houston. We're called Cougar Connection. We're not that type of cougar. We're in the Houston area. We are University of Houston alumni. And Catherine Brown and I actually co-host and lead a meeting of Cougar Connection downtown the second Thursday of the month from 3 to 5, and it is a B2B group. And I've known Catherine. I met her at the NIA summit. I think it was 3 years ago. I was so impressed of her presentation and knowledge of sales and how to really make it applicable to everyone, because everybody is in sales. So Catherine is the owner of ExtraBold Sales here in Houston. She lives in the Heights area. Catherine loves to help people think differently about selling, and I think she's probably going to do that this afternoon as well. She is a people person. Her superpower is hope. I use that acronym too. Hope, and it's not from me, somebody else. Helping other people excel. She sees a possibility in everything and loves people, loves recruiting, selling, and promoting products and services, and been doing it for over 25 years, and especially with B2B sales. She wrote a book, How Good Humans Sell. I highly recommend it if you've never read it before. So Catherine Brown, take it away.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Joyce and Dan, and thank you, Network in Action, for this opportunity. I have been a Network in Action member when I very first moved to Houston, and now I have the pleasure of helping to grow and cultivate a group of people who sell business to business together, still under the brand. So I'm a family member in this family and huge fan, and I really appreciate the opportunity to bring one of my teachings to you. So this talk I'm sharing with you is something I've shared with sales teams inside corporations as well as entrepreneur conferences. So it doesn't matter whether you are the owner of the business who's the seller, or you are a business development employee on behalf of a corporation. I think there'll be something for you here either way. And I am going to use slides. I'm going to go off and on. We're going to use the chat really vigorously. And there's also going to be many opportunities through the talk where I will pause and literally say, Dan, what do we have in the chat? So type questions as you think of them if you'd like. He'll be watching that for me. And then I will also allow you to unmute and just ask live. But some of you are not in a position to come on camera, or you might want to write the question while you're thinking of it. That's fine too. Dan's going to be my sidekick and help me make sure that I track all of that for you. So it'll be very interactive discussion, and that'll be awesome. Okay, Dan, anything else you want to say while I'm getting my screen up?
No, but just take it away. You got the spotlight.
Okay, super. So we're going to talk today. It's a play on the name of my book. My book is called How Good Humans Sell. And this is a play on that as the title is, how to sell like a good human. Why would I use that phrase, good human? Well, the reason is because most people, unless you are a clinical narcissist, which you're probably not going to volunteer if that's the case, right? Most people want to be perceived as kind and helpful and others focused. And unfortunately, what I see in the business community, just far and wide, that is just grieves my sales loving heart, is that people actually, at some level in their brain, they believe that sales stands as a threat to this idea of being a good human, that to sell someone or to engage in selling, and I'm using air quotes, that means something that violates their values as a good human being. And there are even people who are trainers, who are very active on their posts on LinkedIn, who are other kinds of influencers. There's even kinds of people who will use the word sales or the word selling, and their definition is very narrow. So this matters, and I'm going to start with this and open us with this, because one of the things I want to remind you is that words have tremendous power, but words also have multiple definitions. And one of the things that will help you to be empowered to sell more and to feel more confident and more cohesive with your values while selling is if you take a hard look at how you're defining the word and then use the agency, which is the freedom and the power that you have to frame selling the way that you want to. That's one of your outcomes today that we'll be going through. So I'm really excited to walk you through a process of doing that. So we're going to talk in the next hour about how to sell like a good human. And like I said, it'll be super, super interactive. Okay, so there's 3 ways we're going to do that. The first is to kind of take stock of where we are. We're going to talk about where are we today in our mindset about sales, how we define sales, and just how we're feeling, because beliefs really, really, really matter. We're going to notice where we have a little bit of conflict. Most people have a little conflict in this area. Some days I still have a little bit of conflict in this area, and I'll tell you what I do to work through that. And then I'm going to teach you to notice and catch yourself in the act when you're about to avoid selling behavior, or you are about to make up a story about sales that does not serve you. I want you to have the tools to catch yourself in the middle and make a different, more helpful choice that will advance the cause of your business. All right, so those are the 3 things that we're going to go over in that order today. Now, the first thing I want to do is I have this big fat S word up on the screen, and I am going to ask you to do a little experiment with me. What I plan to do next is I'm pulling up my phone so that I don't just wing it and I actually time us. And I am going to actually give us 1 minute. And in 1 minute's time, when I say go, I want you to blow up the chat. Please make this be helpful so that when Dan reads stuff back to us, we actually have a lot to work with. Okay, so if you're able to get to the chat and you're not driving, please be safe. I'd love for you to type in the words. When I give you 1 minute, I want you to list the words or phrases that come to mind when you see the word sales. They can be movies, they can be books, they can be adjectives, they can be nouns, they can be sentence fragments, it can be whatever you want, just anything top of mind. 1 minute, please list in your stream of consciousness what comes up when you see the word sales, starting now. I'll give you 1 minute.
Some of these folks are really taking that stream of conscious to task.
I can't wait to hear.
Yeah, I like it.
About 30 seconds, you're about halfway through. Keep going. Good, bad, anything. Nothing's off limits. We probably don't want to have to censor this, so you might have to censor your language, but
Ron Burgundy will read anything on the teleprompter.
okay, Ron. All right.
All right. So we got the first one, magic of thinking big. Wolf of Wall Street came up several times.
Ooh, okay.
Right. Phone, dollar signs, used cars, aggressive relationships, pushy, obnoxious, sleazy,
Woo!
money, ABC, Tommy Boy, relationships, revenue, new product, prospects, money, slimy, show me the money, incentive, sleazy, pushy, sneaky, ripoff, create win-win, rejection, ads, service, icky, pushy, aggressive, lead generating, rejection, cold calls, marketing, used car salesman, transactional, used car salesman, money, cold calls, buggy person, objections, cold calls, problem solving, 9 lies holding back your business, talking someone into something they do not want or need, one-sided, pressure, quotas, closing.
So good, Dan. That's so
yeah.
good. Thank you so much.
All right.
So you see, this is very rough estimate as I was listening. We have some we have some words that I would code. So if I were coding these words, which literally is what I did prior to writing How Good Humans Sell, I did some anonymous surveys of several hundred people because I wanted to ask this very question. And then I wanted to be able to analyze the data by age and by industry, and whether you were the business owner who is the seller, or you're actually the sales employee that gets hired whose full-time job is to sell. I wanted to have all this way of looking at the data. And so one of the things we had to do is we actually had to code the words. We had to say, this word is overtly negative, this word is neutral, and this word is positive. So it's confusing because there's words like when you have open field text like this is sort of experimental design issue that some of you might find interesting. You have a word like money, and the problem is that money, you don't know what it means to people. Because for some people it's like money, right? And they're really happy. But for others to actually have a money story, and they to them that implies greedy, and it's actually meant in a negative way. So there's words like that that you actually have to code neutral. Because also I wanted to err in that direction to not bias people, because I was pretty sure that I was going to see that the business owner who sets up their business because they have products they want to sell, maybe it's even something you've invented, or they're a service provider, I was expecting to see some hesitation. I was expecting to see some negative framing around selling, because after all, most people who invent a product or service and who go into business, they're not leading that effort with the desire to sell. Selling is part of what they have to do to be successful, but it's not the job they want to do. They want to deliver the service that's provided, right? Or they want to keep making products because they're an engineer. I was fully expecting mostly negative responses among the business owners who sell. Not that that's a good thing, that's a sad thing, but I was expecting that. What was so terrible was what I saw coming from the full-time business-to-business sales employees across every industry. And what they said is words like what you just said. Pushy, sleazy, annoying, dishonest, doesn't listen. People are aggressive, they're liars. People who are in sales talk too much. They're a con artist. They're to be avoided at all cost. Now, again, there were a few neutral words like service, or maybe even they mean that positively, like sales as service could be positive. There were a few like that. But I'm telling you, of the dozens of words that were given, these words I've picked on the screen were the ones that came up over and over and over again. Remember a few minutes ago when I was saying that we get to choose what words mean. If you get only this out of this talk, I want you to come away and realize that you have the power to change your language. And if you're the owner of the business, to influence the language that others use by your positive example and even explicit conversations about this issue. Even marketing trainers, whose job is also lead generation, will say things like, if you follow my method, you'll never have to sell. Right? What are they saying when they're saying that? What's implied in that statement, or a statement like that, is you won't have to be pushy. You will not have to persuade. You will not have to twist anyone's arm. And I'm here to tell you, I fundamentally reject that definition. It is offensive. It does not have to be true. And the few bad actors that are out there that actually do act that way in sales are the minority of the population of most of us who do sell like good humans. And I don't think we should let them define what we call selling. I think that's giving away all the power for good that we can do. Because when we get the right product or service in the hands of the right person at the right time, it is a life-giving, respectable, honorable, important job. And it's critically important that we notice when we are giving away the power of for good that phrase could mean by letting other people tell us what it means. When I say selling for someone, I do not mean selling to them. I do not mean selling at them. I do not mean talking them into something. I do not mean always be closing. I mean having a system and a process and a way that you make an offer to someone that you believe, you've already pre-screened and you believe will be a good fit, and giving them the liberty to say yes, yes now, or maybe later. That's what I train people to do. So the first thing I want you to do is to recognize where you are. So if you had mostly negative words and you resonate with this, please know you're in good company. This is the thing. If you are responsible for a sales force or you're hiring salespeople, what I'm telling you is that these negative thoughts are they're so pervasive. It's my conviction that you cannot find and hire a sales force that will not be affected and influenced by this negativity. That's why it's so important that we catch ourselves in the act, we notice the language we're using, and we move forward. Okay, so before I go on, I want to give people a chance to ask a question about that or respond. Dan, is there anything in the chat, or should we, open up the discussion before I build on this idea?
Nothing new in the chat, but if you want to unmute yourselves, I guess now's a good time.
Yeah, anybody want to comment or ask anything about that? Okay, I'm going to keep going. So this is the thing. There is a term in psychology that I think is really helpful in the context of this conversation. And this term is cognitive dissonance. So let me tell you a story real quick before you read that definition. I thought I was going to be a professional musician. And the term dissonance is used in the musical world. Those of you that play an instrument or have kids who have taken music theory, you might know this. Dissonance is when you make chords sound a little ajar because you want to set them up to be resolved because you're going to change key, or you want the piece to experience resolution. So everyone goes at the end, right? It's a purposeful technique. But in other parts of our life, if you think about it, in almost every other context except music, dissonance means off or uncomfortable. So I really love words and their definitions. And I want you to notice this cognitive dissonance means cognitive is in my brain. Dissonance means something is uncomfortable or ajar. And here is my definition. Cognitive dissonance is a fancy way of saying that you believe two contradictory statements at the same time. So here is actually an illustration of that. Here is my beloved chocolate. I'm the kind of person that when we go to a restaurant or it's time to pick your birthday cake or something like that, and people say, do you want the strawberry pie or the chocolate? I'm like, I think the world's divided into two people, and I don't understand who's the strawberry pie person. Because if you could have anything that's really good chocolate, why would you not pick it? Like, I'm the chocolate lover. Okay. But the truth is, I'm using this cake as an example of cognitive dissonance, and then we'll tie it back to sales. Here's the thing about people that's so confusing about our brains and our beliefs. I completely believe that dessert is okay in moderation, that chefs are amazing, and that people who figure out how to make the best, deepest, richest, most chocolate cake are just a gift from God, and that desserts are worth celebrating. It's a way to mark celebrations and honor people, and that we're free to enjoy them. On the other hand, I also, deep down, there's something in me that believes that people who avoid sugar are superior to people who are addicted to sugar, because I've been both at different times. And that I think if I had more willpower and I were a better person, I would pretty much always say no to this. Okay. And the problem is that I believe both things. So every time a hard to pass up chocolate cake comes before me, I experience cognitive dissonance. I feel stuck because I actually believe both sets of beliefs are true. And I think the same is true for sales. When I tell you that employee that you're looking to hire, or that one you just did hire, who I'm saying probably believes some of the words on the word cloud about sales, even though they volunteered and understand it's their job to sell full time, they have cognitive dissonance just like the rest of us. So again, I want you to hear me say you're in good company. This is very normal. But what's also normal is to just leave it there and not figure out how to work through that, or make jokes about sales, or, let other people control the definitions, as opposed to saying, you know what, this belief is not serving me. It's not helping me. And then starting to work through what to do about it, which I'm going to teach you to do today. So let me ask you if you have any other examples that come to mind. If there's any psychology lovers here, let me show you my fancy definition again. Fancy way of saying that you believe two contradictory statements at the same time. Another example I heard about this is when people think about justice versus mercy.
You like it?
Right?
you
They'll,
didn't do
they'll
that.
struggle like this. Does anybody else have any other examples where they're willing to volunteer? Like, I feel both ways at the same time about this same subject. Anything else comes to mind in the subject of cognitive dissonance? Is there anything in the chat or something someone wants to volunteer?
Hello. Two, please.
All right. Anyone at all in the chat? I have a personal experience right now that I recently invested in some solar panels, right? And there's all the, there's all the good that is just common sense to me that I know that I'm going to be getting with it. But it's just always this nagging feeling. It's,
Can we come up?
I wonder, have I been sold to?
Can we come up?
Hold on one moment.
Sure.
All right. Yeah, and I feel like that as somebody who made the decision, it's the decision I made that I know it's right ultimately for me and my family. But I guess it's the uncertainty of the future, of what comes next or whatever. And the person that presented this to me, I mean, like, I felt like I was friends with the guy by the end of it. You know what I'm saying? So it was in no way an indictment on his ability to sell, his ability to answer any of the questions that I've had, right? And it was, it's all up here, what I'm experiencing, but I think the guy was great. I felt like we walked away friends, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a great example. Does Dan's example make anyone else think of something like that? Anything you want to add that's a sales situation, or maybe even your experience as a seller? Just a chance to comment if you'd like to.
I got a comment in the chat here. Your fun side, go for the shiny object, but our logical thoughts are telling you to do the work.
Yeah, I realized in this whole area too, kind of like work, I also think about this about money, right? That, like, I really was raised to believe that if a person has a lot, there's a strong possibility they did something that was unethical or unfair to someone in the process of getting there. Like, my parents they didn't overtly teach that, but I kind of caught that, the caught versus taught. And then, as an entrepreneur, as I make more, does that experience a conflict as I have financial success? Well, sure, I have dissonance about that. So I'm training myself to notice that sort of thing. Anybody else unmute or have an example that comes to that about the cognitive dissonance? I think two things about the same subject at the same time. I want you to see how normal this is. This is very, very normal. And that doesn't mean it's not costly. So we're going to work through it. Any other comments?
I think just to kind of pick it back off of what Daniela was saying, which, when you're buying something, right, especially like thinking of buying a home or buying something that's more costly, you're excited about it, that's the right thing to do, but it's that buyer's remorse that you're like, I'm not sure if I should be doing this. And what if there's a rainy day that comes around the corner and then, yeah. So.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, thanks, Monica.
So, Catherine, as you know, this is Lawrence Hackney.
Hi, Lawrence Hackney.
Hey, this is my favorite part of your teaching. So,
thanks.
Yes.
Thanks. Did you have another example came to mind?
Not an example, but just like I said, like when you talk about this.
It's very human. Okay, so we all have these thoughts. We actually, at some level, we've heard enough about sales teaching that we think, I understand that when it's the right person at the right time, sales is helping. Or maybe we've been part of a company that really pounds that in, right? Says sales is helping, sales is helping. We do believe that now at some level, and yet we also think if I call again, I will be bothering them. Okay, now we met and they said that person I met at the event, they said to message them and that we'd get back together. And I did send an email and I didn't hear from them. And so maybe they were just being nice to me and they didn't really mean it. And so now if I go follow up again, I'm going to look like I'm chasing them, right? This is where those beliefs start to really matter because it affects the action that we take or don't take, because this dissonance we feel and which side wins with the devil on one shoulder and the angel on the other side, whichever side you think that is, right? It affects the action that we'll take. And so that's why it's so important to look at. Another thing that I want you to be aware of is that the reason these beliefs are so powerful, I'm hanging out in this area of beliefs about what is your current state, is because there's 50 years of research in psychology about a topic called confirmation bias. Confirmation bias teaches that people will look for information out in the world that confirms what they already believe. And the reason this is so important to understand is because what the research shows us is that you actually go seek it out. It's not like it's just passing by you and you grab it. All humans go out like their homing device is looking for proof of what they believe and even selectively evaluate what's in front of them in order to be right. And then even more damning is that confirmation bias is automatic and not even conscious. It's non-conscious. This is why as soon as something becomes important to you, let's say that you're in the market for a red sports car, you can see the red sports car 6 lanes over. The red sports cars were always out there, but now you're noticing because you actually have a bias toward that. Why would I bring that up in the sales context? Because if you deep down believe mostly the negative words on the word cloud, then what's going to happen is the sales situation that comes up for all of us, like, hey, this person said to get in touch with them, but now they're kind of hard to reach and I have to decide what to do next. The way you interpret what is happening will be affected based on your belief. So if you're really worried about being seen as too pushy, because deep down you actually believe that sales fundamentally in its definition means persuading someone or manipulating someone, or that you have to be pushy to be successful. If you believe those things, then you will have, it's like you're, I have this plastic glass here. It's like I'm trying to read the words, but I'm looking all the way through the water, all the way through. It's like my glass is cloudy because I can't actually objectively evaluate what's happening since I'm affected by the filter of my own thoughts. This is a little bit esoteric, but I want you to track with me because it's actually extremely practical. The minute you take responsibility and notice, you know, I really have a pretty negative view of this and this is costing me something. The minute you open your mind to that, you can catch yourself making up stories about what other people who you want to sell to must be thinking. And the truth is, we don't know. If someone doesn't get back to us, we don't know what is happening. And what I train my clients to do is I say, look, human beings are interpreters. We're always making meaning of things around us. We actually can't help it. It's just the nature of being human. And it's one of the things that really separates us from a lot of the animals. You know, one of the things. So let's make up a story that really serves us. Right, if Monica says, get in touch with me, and I reach out and I don't hear from her, and then I let 2 or 3 business days pass, and I notice because I've reminded myself, did Monica, notice if Monica got back to you, get back to her again. I've set up some kind of system as a reminder. When it comes up again, I will feel less emotional when I go, oh, look at that reminder. You know what? I haven't heard from her. Now, most people, that's when they give up. They'll try people 1 time or 2 times, but they won't go beyond that because they start to make up a story because of their bias. And they start to think they must not have meant it. They were just being nice. I'll be bothering them if I reach out. And the truth is, Monica might be ill. Monica, I hope you're not. Right? Monica might be ill. Monica might have a child that's ill. Okay, my personal assistant just sent her kindergartner to school starting Monday. It's Wednesday, and everyone in the whole class is home with a cold already. So guess who can't work very much today? My assistant, right? Because her kid, who she was so excited she finally launched to school, is home. So stuff goes on in people's lives all the time, and we don't know what it is, but our bias affects what we see. Anyone who is following along with the story and thinking of a real life sales scenario, I would be so grateful if you want to share, ooh, I can see how this bias affected the person who was selling to me, or I could see how I engaged in this, because I want you to see how practical it is to realize that we all do this so that we can begin to move it from being an unconscious thing to more of deliberate action.
There's a comment in the chat that I think speaks to this a little bit,
Okay.
and it just popped up actually. So if you're selling something that there's lots of competitors sell that are the same product, how can we be very unique? So maybe they're thinking that they're not unique, and that's their own personal cognitive bias.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Great example. And so in that case, that could be like a story that perhaps, and feel free to unmute if you'd like, to interact about this topic more. But I hear that, Dan, and I think it could be that that's something we tell ourselves, right? So that creates sort of limiting beliefs about the value add or the difference we could provide that could stifle creativity about actually being different. And in this weird way, if we rehearse those kind of thoughts, and I'm not accusing you of this because we all do this, I do this too. When we rehearse thoughts that kind of keep us a little bit stuck, we get this benefit because we get to be right about it, even though it's not really ultimately beneficial, because what's more beneficial is reaching more people for more sales, right? But we get temporarily, it sort of satisfies us because we're like, see, I knew it. And that's what, like, we all like to have our biases confirmed, even sometimes if we're arguing for a limitation. I know I've done that.
I would say too that even with a situation like that, you could probably identify something different. It's about you, if it's whether it's your product or your service or what have you. You hold a light,
yeah,
and as long as you're able to zero in on that,
absolutely,
let it shine.
Absolutely. I would say this is a little bit of a tangent, but I'm a professional salesperson who loves marketing. So my mind goes to, well, maybe a lot of things about the products or services are very similar, but you could have content marketing that's totally different. There's a way you can have thought leadership that's completely different. Even if what you sell is truly more transactional, you don't have to be transactional, right? So you still have choices there, even if there is a real competitive space. Any other questions or thoughts about anything up until now? Because now I'm about to transition into what the heck do I do about this? So I want to make sure the concepts are clear.
I just wanted to chime in real quickly. So just this past week, I had an event, went well. Then they said, okay, I told them I'll give you a call tomorrow. We talked and they're like, well, let me think about it. And I'm like, okay, so when do you want to circle back? And then, well, Monday, and then Monday hit. And then I'm like kind of waiting for them to contact me. Right. And so I already in my head, I'm like, well, if they're not contacting me, they're obviously not interested. And now it's noon and I'm going to be reaching out to them. So I already had a set thing in my head. So.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. Yes. So Monica, another thought about that comes to me is, number one, I really appreciate that you noticed, I was sort of watching for that to happen. So there could be like a whole interesting direction we could go about that, right? Because that's interesting. And I think we've all done that. The other thing that I want to give you like pro tip, while I'm coaching here live is I have had that happen as well. And one of the things that I've changed about my process that all of you can take from this call is that if you name what you'll do next, you'll never be in that situation again because you will not be waiting for someone else in the same way. So you could say, how would you like to follow this in Monday to think about it? Let's talk Monday. Then you could say, super, if I don't hear from you, on text or email by Monday, I'll call you by the end of the day and suggest our next steps. They're always going to say, okay. right? And some of you might be thinking, oh, that feels a little aggressive. If it does, I promise you it's because too many words from the first slide are still filling your brain. Because when we're clear about what we'll do next, and we say it in our, like, that's why I love Zoom, right? You can smile, you look straight in the camera, and it's even better face to face, right? You say, great, well, what if I call you, if we don't connect by the end of the day, what if I give you a call? They're just 95% of the time, they're going to say, great, thanks. You're probably going to leave a message. And Monica, when you leave the message, you're going to say, I loved meeting you. Here's what I'm hoping we'll talk about next. And when I hang up, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to send a meeting invitation for a 15-minute call. And I'm going to put it like a week or two from now so that you've got plenty of time. If the time doesn't work for you, please feel free to counter propose. I just want to stay on top of our conversation and continue from when we met the other day. And you hang up and you send the meeting invite. And if they don't want to have that meeting with you, then they will cancel it and they will let you know. But what you have to do is you have to go based on the information that's the most truthful information you actually had from the last time you spoke. And that was when they said, yes, they wanted to talk on Monday. So this is what I call being the guide. Being the guide in the movie is staying in front of people, right? It's being the stronger character, because the main actor, the hero of the story, is usually the person who's like struggling a little bit. They have a problem, right? They have a scar on their forehead and they don't know what happened to them, or they want to learn to use the force, but they don't really know what it is. And they need to be trained, right? There's something about the hero that's unknown. And you're the guide who's like, hey, I'll stay in front of you and I'll make this path easy. And I do that with that really clear communication. So keeping yourself from being in that situation can also be done in a very conversational way. And then it leaves less room for it to be weird. Somebody have a question about that? Does that make sense?
Hello. Hello, Catherine.
Hi.
Well, I'm Shadi, and I'm really happy to meet you. It's actually a wonderful conversation, but one of the things that isn't for me clear about this, is it about we creating a relationship, deeply with customers that would help us in increasing sales, or is it about like brand awareness to be unique and we can get more clients selling from us? And especially if we are selling a product, more to a product, not like a service, products that are available at the store in several kind of ways. Thank you.
Yes, so you're asking me which of those two is this mainly going to be focusing on in this presentation?
Like which one is not focusing? Which one is the most important to be focused on during marketing or during our sales?
Okay, give me the two choices again.
Is it about marketing, customer relationship management, or is it about brand awareness?
That's really a great question, because the more consistent, clear brand awareness people have about us, the less we're actually going to have to even do any of the sales steps, because they're going to be warmer leads that come to us. I was just doing a sales training for some of my clients before this call, and I was giving them the tools where, let me give you this scenario. In this scenario, you are at a trade show and it's an industry trade show, and someone comes by your booth and you follow up and say, let's get on the phone and catch up next week and get to know each other. Great. So your prospect, you'd like to sell to them, but they don't know much about you. Okay, so this is a pretty cold situation. If you get on, you can't start doing a hard sell. That's rude, because they just agreed to talk to you because you asked them to, but not because they're well qualified or have followed you closely. Are you tracking with me? This is more like a marketing education call. You need to build a relationship, right? Because that's probably going to be a little bit longer sales cycle because they don't know anything about you yet. But if you've been following me on LinkedIn and you get my email marketing and you get all this stuff for a long time, when we get on the phone, then we're going to be able to actually get down to business about me qualifying and finding out the specific problems that brought you to the call. And we're really going to enter a sales call. Does that make sense? Yeah. So the higher my brand awareness and the brand trust, even if you're just an individual brand as a person, the higher that is and the more recognized that is, the difference that the different way that call will go, because they're already more familiar with you and what you represent.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah. Any other questions or comments about what we've said so far before I keep building on this? So what I want to remind you is that this wicked thing called confirmation bias, it is universal to all human beings. It is not specific just to sales. We have it in everything of life. If I want to get super political, right? We can talk about this in lots of other domains. There's lots of domains that it comes true. It affects what we see, what we read, what sticks with us in a conversation, what we hear. I think we've all been in situations where we've had a conflict with a friend, right? Or romantic partner. And we have this conflict and they come back and they say, you said X. And you're racking your brain. You're like, I just said these certain words and I'm pretty sure that wasn't one of those sentences, right? Raise your hand if that's happened to you, right? It's happened to all of us. But that person could take a lie detector test. They could put their hand on the Bible and, in court, they could say, yes, she did. She did say that. Yes, he did. He did say that. Why? Because since I was expecting it, it's what I heard. So this is why we're going to be very, very mindful and notice ourselves about our thoughts and what we're believing, because these beliefs really affect us. We selectively seek out, we selectively evaluate automatically and non-consciously based on our beliefs. That's why improving our beliefs about sales is essential. So let's talk about how to do that. This is a simple model that I'm crazy about because it takes these super complicated concepts of coaching and therapy and professional development and all these things, and it boils them down into this very simple acronym. And I run this by all kinds of people who know even more about this than I do. And they've agreed that this is simple, but it's not silly. Okay, simple, but it's not silly. The BEAR model, this is how most people with their decisions in their life, including whether to sell, whether to call someone back, whether to do the right next thing, whether to eat the cake at 9 o'clock at night, standing in front of the fridge, even though I'm on a diet, whether to say the mean thing in that moment. This is how people make decisions. B stands for beliefs, E stands for emotion, A stands for action, and R stands for results. This is what happens. What I believe is true in my brain about whatever it is influences when I get outside stimulus, I get feedback. I don't hear from someone, right? In Monica's example, I don't hear back from someone. And then I feel a certain way. Well, what I believe is true affects how I interpret how I'm feeling in that moment when I don't hear from them. That sends me down this chain reaction to whether I take certain action or not. I'm now going to avoid reaching out. I'm going to have my feelings hurt. I'm going to get angry. I'm going to feel defensive. I'm going to feel embarrassed, or I'm going to choose to respond with empathy. Okay. And the problem, you all, is that this happens in 5 seconds in our brain, right? It's just like that. So breaking it down and noticing, we can start training ourselves and catching ourselves in the act. Because consistent actions in a certain direction, one or the other, lead to our results. So what's really cool about this is that you can flip this thing on its head, right? You can say, okay, so self, where am I with my results? Am I happy with the state of my current sales process? Am I happy with my pipeline? Do I have enough business? Yes, no. Okay, what actions have I been taking consistently to grow this? Well, I've done this, but I've not done this. Okay, let's work backwards a little bit more. Let me ask you, what were you feeling when you didn't choose X? Or what were you feeling when you did decide to do Y? Probably those actions go all the way back to something you were believing in that moment. I'm going to give you a quick example. A couple of years ago, it's the start of it was right before COVID. I had an opportunity to sell an all-day in-person training to a company that I'd been following for a long time. They really were kind of a dream client culturally. I respected them. I'd done some of their training programs in other domains, but they hadn't invested in sales training. And I was so excited about being aligned with this brand. I went to a conference. I actually met the CEO. I had the good fortune of running into him in the food line. I introduced myself. I got a meeting. He told his VP of sales on a conference call with me, I really want to do this. Would you make it so? He said, I agree. Let's make it so. I do another call with the VP of sales. We continue to refine what the training is going to include. I agree to send a proposal. I set a time for us to talk about it, just like I just modeled a minute ago. It's going to stay ahead on the actions. And the guy doesn't show to the call. And I'm okay at first because I'm thinking, well, that's super weird. I mean, I've talked to the CEO. We've had several calls. I know they were excited. He's a no-show. You know, what happened? So I'm a little bit concerned, genuine concern for them, but I'm not thinking this is about me. So I follow up, I leave a message, say, hey, I think we were going to go through this thing I've sent to you. We're going to talk about it. Hope you're okay. Here's some times I'm available, expecting to hear from them for them to choose from those times because I'm keeping this ball going. Well, I don't hear from them. True story. Okay, this is now one missed meeting, first time I tried after that. So I'm like, oh, this is interesting. So what I have at my disposal is I have a cell phone number. I have the corporate landline, even though I know the person doesn't office there, and I have the person's email. So I rotate methods, and every several days I reach out and I say, I'm a little bit concerned. I'm hoping you're okay. And I'm going to go ahead. The time I named that I could talk, I'm no longer available. And now I'm available at such and such time. So I'm going to send you a meeting invite. The meeting invite wouldn't get accepted. Like, I mean, this was weird. So I tried 3-4 times and I'm thinking, what's happening? Well, ultimately, it comes back to my beliefs because I'm fine. Time number one, totally fine. Believing something has literally just happened that's an emergency on his part. Time number two, I'm still fine. Time number three, I'm okay. Time number four, I'm thinking, have I imagined this entire thing? Right. And time number five, I'm thinking, oh my God, they have gone out and priced this out to a competitor and they think I'm too expensive. True story. But I'm not going to act on that because I know better than that because I teach this stuff. But I'm literally thinking, because what happened is wherever those beliefs butt up against you and start being costly, they're different for different people. I'm telling you, I was fine until like the fifth time. Fifth time, I leave what I call an exit message. I just said, I'm starting to feel weird, like I'm bothering you. And I'm also concerned that something's wrong. We talked several times in a row. You seem like you're ready to go. And so I'm assuming you've chosen to go a different direction. I literally use those words. I'm assuming you've chosen to go a different direction. Those are magic words, by the way. I encourage you to use them because it helps someone to back out of something and they don't feel defensive, but they also will respond if it's not true. So I said, I'm assuming that you've chosen to go a different direction because we haven't connected. I get a message back immediately. I'm on a call and I see him call in and I'm just like so sad I can't take the call. And I have this message and he says, I don't know what happened to me. My whole family was down for the count. I was fine. We were so sick. I had to drop everything and I'm just now catching up. And I didn't tell you, but the number you've been calling was my company issued cell phone, but I'm going to give you a different number. So we're sure to talk today. True story. I didn't even have the super secret bat phone. Can't even have the right number. So I get the right number. I call him, we connect, and no lie, like less than a month later, I'm standing in front of them, having sold the biggest piece of work I've ever sold. But I had to try him 5 times. And I was in the heat of the battle of this thought process right here, right? I'm struggling because it's like, what am I believing is true and how am I going to act out? I had all this evidence that said they thought what I was doing was valuable, but when push came to shove, I actually felt insecure. And what happens, and most people do, is they don't get to time number 5. They actually can hardly get to time number 2 because they're so worried they're being perceived a certain way. And so they think, well, if they were interested, they become defensive and self-protective. And they said, well, if they were interested, they'd get back to me. But the truth is they didn't even get your first message because they have so many emails they didn't even see it. Or you're a voicemail, listen to her, but other people don't listen to their voicemail sometimes. And you've made assumptions about that, right? We all do this. But those beliefs are driving us to usually less action than we should take because we feel nervous because we want to be seen as a good human and we do not want to seem too pushy, and so we underact. This is the chronic cycle that I see over and over and over and over again. Questions. I want to give you a chance to ask me questions about what I've said, what you would want to do in a certain situation. I'm going to pause and see if there's anything in the chat, or if everybody wants to unmute. You're absolutely welcome to ask me whatever you want.
See some people empathizing. And yeah, and I see it's so much of what you're saying is just how do we get out of our own way? You know, how do we recognize when that voice in our head is telling us the thing that we don't need to be hearing, and how do we go off, get off our butts and reap the rewards? I think about cycling, right? I know that I love cycling, and but when you have to wake up at like 5 a.m. to get a good ride in, right? And the weather stinks, it's cold out or it's raining or whatever, right? And you just don't want to do it. But even I know that I get 10 minutes into this thing, I'm gonna love it, and then I'm gonna feel good. But it's just all that stuff in your way that you're like, I gotta do this, I gotta get dressed, and yada. But there's rewards at the end of this. You just need to know that they're there for the taking.
Yes, and then to your example, I would be just so careful about my thoughts leading up to it, right? So I would try not to even cultivate anything that suggests this is going to be hard, because you're not in denial. You're just getting yourself out the door and coaching yourself to get going, right? So you want to say, you deserve to be, I deserve to be a fit person. This is a pleasure for me. When I do this, I'm always glad. People, successful people exercise. Whatever motivates you, that helps you get going. I'm doing this crazy, like super vigorous personal development exercise routine right now. And this morning from 6:30 to 7, when I was doing an online yoga class, before I did another thing, I was like coaching myself. People who are successful in other domains of their life also take care of their body.
Yes.
People like us do this. People like us do this. Like, I'm coaching myself, because at 6:30, it's not that natural for me to be positive toward that. But why am I doing this? Because I want to cultivate new beliefs about what's possible, so that I feel happier doing the work. So I do the work, so I get the results I want. I want the results.
Yeah.
So I'm going to work.
It's really just a matter, and when you start seeing the results and that you start seeing the pattern develop, that's when the mentality starts to switch. Once you see that, okay, once I keep doing this, right, they won't always be home runs. Yes. But once you see the pattern start to form, then that kind of reinforces itself. But you got to get yourself to that point.
Yes, exactly. Well, does anybody have an example of something they're willing to share about when they were in the throes of a sales situation, and now that you're thinking about your own example, as I told you the story of that sales training, you can think of a belief that you had. It's a belief about the other person, a belief about yourself. Does anybody have an example they're willing to share?
It's 50 of us in here right now.
Okay, I don't mind waiting.
This is Tony. Restate your question, restate your ask again.
Yeah, Tony, my question is, now that you heard the example of my sales scenario, where I was telling you I was fine at first, and then I started believing maybe I was crazy. Maybe it hadn't gone as well as I thought, right? Because there's a lot of times to try someone and have them not get back to you after you've already had 3 sales calls. So I'm asking, as I tell that story, can anybody think of a time when you realize now that you were believing something that was untrue, or something that was unhelpful in the sales process?
It happens all the time, actually, because, and even though I'm a coach like you are, marketing and sales coach like you are, it happens all the time, especially when we're relationship people, and we would never treat somebody that way. So can I think of a specific time? No, but I will tell you, it happens a lot. And you kind of become, I've kind of, in my older age and maturity in my business, I've kind of become kind of numb to it. But yeah, I know what you're saying. I can't think of a specific situation, but it happens.
Sure, thanks. That's okay.
from Danielle. It took over 6 months to get a sale when they thought that I had tapped out, or when I thought they tapped out. So somebody persevered half a year. Good job, Danielle.
Absolutely.
I was gonna say, Catherine, I had a very similar where I was assuming that they really weren't gonna work with me at all. I had a lot of stories going on in my head. And it was a constant, like, it was maybe 15 or 20 callbacks. Like, I was at the point where this person must hate me by now. And they ended up being my highest sale. I made $168,000 with that sale. But it took me, like, it was horrific on the emotional side. Like, I feel like I was in therapy just for that sale alone. So I'm not sure what the workout came. But I like this bear thing, by the way, a lot. I'm taking notes. So
good. I think you can use it because you can self-diagnose and self-coach when you notice where you are in this pattern. I think about the bear every day. I mean, this really helps me. So that's why I've worked it into the talk. I'm glad that that's resonating. Yeah, I think you can find it for anything. Like back to my eat late at night at the fridge example. It's like at some level, if I'm breaking a diet, at some level, I'm believing in that moment, either something pretty deep down, like I don't deserve to feel better or be thinner or, love life more in that way. Or at the very least, I'm thinking I deserve to celebrate. I deserve a break. I deserve a moment to myself. I deserve a reward. And that's not untrue. Then it just becomes, okay, now what emotion is going with that, right? Like, is that really the action I want to take to get the thing I want? Maybe I need to take a bath. Maybe I need to call a friend, right? So catching yourself in the act. This is the part of catching yourself in the act. And here's the amazing news. What I think is just remarkable about human brain and elasticity and how we grow. Like we've all known examples of people who've lost capabilities of things with strokes and then they can get them back. Why? Because the brain can change. And I want everyone to have a growth mindset that if you are recognizing while we're talking, you're saying, Catherine, my list of stuff of what sales was really negative. The thing is that it can change. It can improve. I see people do it every day. It is a joy in my life to see people reframe what selling is and saying, I won't let, those unhelpful people on LinkedIn tell me what selling means. Selling means everything that my client wants. Selling is the path to what I want. Selling is a gift to others. Selling is an art and a science. Selling is helping. When I am a good seller to people, I am giving them choices and they appreciate that. Whatever you have to tell yourself to coach yourself and practice reforming. We're reforming what this is because we don't want to let other people press in on us and tell us what we want to think about this because they're not right. And it's super unhelpful. And you get to decide. And this comes all the way down to when someone says in passing, okay, when they say, well, if you do this, you won't even have to sell. It'll just be so easy. You could say, well, what do you mean you wouldn't have to sell? What does selling mean to you? Make them defend it, right? Oh, well, I mean, blah, 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 blah. It's like, well, I don't think that. I don't think that. It's really being brave with yourself. Like I get to decide. I get to decide what kind of person I want to be. And so I want to give you examples. There are ways people that I work with move from mostly believing the negative to really believing when I do this, I am a helper, right? That this is actually putting the right thing in the right person's hand at the right time is an act of love. It's enhancing their life and making their life better and more full. Right? It's a powerful role because I have the power for good in people's lives. I don't use my power for bad. I use it for good. Right. And I'm very thoughtful about the way I go about it. And I equip people. And when you equip people with the right product or service at the right time, you're helping them get where they're trying to go. You're being that guide. All these words, this can be your positive word cloud, that you are a giver and you are generous and you are consistent and you're selfless. And you're open and you're growing and you're changing. These are words instead. So one thing Daniello has that he's going to put in the chat that I want to give you that's a gift for today, that's a takeaway, is a priming sheet. So there's a lot of research on what's called priming. And priming is when you expose people to an idea about something that they're not supposed to act on at that exact moment, but on which they'll draw and reference the information later. So there's all kinds of studies. For the interest of time, I'll only tell you later if somebody wants to stick around and hear it. but there's been a lot of lab work that has shown that a person's doing a puzzle and they're being exposed to certain words and they don't know they're being primed. They're seeing the words, they go about their day and they actually recall that stuff back again, right? It gets in your brain and sinks down. Well, one of the things we did as an exercise with people with my company is in my clients' own words, they listed what they wanted to believe that sales meant instead of those negative words from the word cloud. And some of these words are here and some are even better. Y'all, this list is almost all my clients. Like only a few of the things are me and what I said, but it's the loveliest list. And I really want to tell you that there's lots of steps to rebuilding your thought process, but one of them that you can begin with today is to take the list, download the list, and review it every day. And you don't even have to review it right before a sales call. It could be part of your morning routine. It could be part of journaling. It could be something you do later in the day. You could make a screensaver out of it, right? You can post it on your mirror and just read it. Just read it over and expose yourself to these positive thoughts over and over. That's a step in over time of reframing, what sales means. Okay, I want to be sensitive about our time. I'm going to tell you how you can learn more about me and follow up, and then I'll take any more questions. So LinkedIn is my primary platform. I show up every day at this profile. There's lots of Catherine Browns out there, as you can imagine. So I'm Catherine Lee Brown, if you want to look at this address. And I'm happy to connect with you if we're not already connected. This is my email. And also, if you like QR codes, if you want to take a picture of this, it's going to take you to a form. And I do a weekly sales tip email. And it's usually about 3 paragraphs. Once a month, I do a roundup where I have several subjects and it's longer, but most Fridays it's quite short. And I talk about goal setting with sales, or I talk about beliefs, or I talk about how to qualify, or I talk about what is marketing versus what is selling. And I give away a lot of content. I really love to do that. It's part of my brand that I just give a lot before I expect someone to buy. And that makes me happy. And so the email is really high quality and you can subscribe, and you of course can unsubscribe anytime if it doesn't make sense. But if you'd like to follow me and you'd like to get that, all you have to do is take a picture and that'll take you to the landing page and you give me your email and you'll be on the list. I think, Dan, how much time do we have for questions?
We had 10 minutes and there was actually one in the chat.
Okay.
And so it sounds like a voice in someone's head here. So, okay, so with that high amount of touches, I feel like it becomes a chase. So when does it become too much and too pushy?
Super, super question. I'm going to tell you exactly how I do it and my logic for it. In general, because I'm going to leave this up for just another minute in case someone's struggling with the QR, and then I'll cancel it. We'll just be on screen. In general, because people are worried about being too pushy, because they want to be seen as a good human, and they have mostly the negative words in the word cloud. I feel like what's a little bit implied with your question is I'm worried about, was not implied, it's stated, I'm worried about being pushy, right? So remember, that's a pervasive, concern and thought that's framing your question. And that's okay. I appreciate that honesty. So we don't want to seem that way. And so that's influencing how you might even hear my suggestion, is what I want to raise to you. So I want to ask you to kind of be open to this thought. If we don't know someone well, we do not know their preferred method of communication, meaning, do they get, 100 new emails a day so that they don't mind receiving an email, but it's not actually the best way to reach them. Are they a person who listens to voicemail? Are they a person who reads voicemail because they have something on their phone like I do that turns it into, a written message? Do they never do that? Do they have more than one phone? Do we know that answer? If they're on LinkedIn, do they know how to use InMail? Maybe, maybe not, I find. I find there's people I'm connected to who actually never check that part of it. There's others who use it as prolifically as they use email, right? So Facebook Messenger, right? There's all these ways you can communicate. If people are under a certain age, they might text. So there are these methods of reaching people. And then there's the spacing. And what I find is that in general, most people want to do about one touch a week, and they want to spread that out and only try a few times. And this is why I think that's not enough. Everything we know about statistics, as well as our own personal experiences, if you think about what you read in Open, everything we see is that on the high side, someone's seeing about half of what you're doing. So I ask you, and this is rhetorical, to everybody here, whatever you think seems like a lot, divide it in half and ask, is that the number I want them to experience? So in the case of the 5 tries to the guy I'd sent the proposal to, number one, don't forget, we'd already had 3 calls and I'd sent a proposal. So this wasn't, a cold lead. But also, I didn't ask him, but I would wager money. I would wager a bet that because he was not ill, he was not well, he was not in his right mind, and he was behind, there's no way he knew how many times I tried him. Like experientially, he didn't receive it that way. So I always have to round up from how I want it to be perceived, because nobody gets all the messages because they're not paying that much attention to us. They just, especially if we've never worked together, they just don't know us very well. A stat I'll share with you is, I'm encouraging you all to follow my email marketing because I've been cultivating a list for 10 years and I'm getting really good at this copy. I have about a 50% open rate every week on this email. And I'm saying that because I want you to know that what I'm saying is people who know, like, and trust me, only half of them open my emails every week. The other half don't open it. So how much more do we have to try people who do not yet know us? I want those thoughts to also intermingle with that concern, because we have to find a balance between those things. You can unmute or put something in the chat. I'm interested in your thoughts about that. That'd be my response, is I have to take all that data and then decide, okay, what am I going to do? And is it actually too many times to try? Any other thoughts or questions about that?
Mr. Coach Hess here wrote something interesting. I'm not sure how to interpret it. Enthusiasm has a half-life. What does that mean? Coach, you want to elaborate?
Yeah, it has a very short half-life. Once you encourage enthusiasm, right, in part of the sales process, well, give it 24 hours, and how enthusiastic will they be? Why we need to keep re-encouraging or regenerating the enthusiasm, because it's a very short time frame. When you think about anything that you get enthusiastic about, how long until you're not enthusiastic about it? And that's part of the the whole emotional side of buying and selling.
Yeah, thanks, Coach. Yeah, I also I like that, and it's why some things like priming sheets or communities that people are in, even things like this, events like this, they're so important, because we all need to stay empowered. And I follow another coach that I really love, and he differentiates between inspiration and empowerment. And inspiration is like, I feel good, but it's short-lived. And empowerment's like, I actually have tools to do my life. So what part of why I wanted to give you the bear model was like, you are all capable of self-analyzing. Where am I in this model? Am I taking action? Am I not? How am I feeling? Right? You can walk up and down that model in a very basic way, and you have a tool to stop in the middle of a big decision where you're like, am I going to keep going or am I going to give up? Right? That's empowerment versus just enthusiasm or just inspiration. What do you think of that, Coach Hust?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Yeah, I think empowerment carrying the long term is certainly it, right? And you stay with empowerment, I think your enthusiasm, meaning given a relationship and a client, will continue to grow, right? Because the empowerment keeps driving it further. And it's not so much just short life of enthusiasm, we turn it into a relationship. And that's where business happens and how we make things work, right?
And I think just like Daniela's bike example, like I really love that you brought that up, Dan, because what I want you all to know is like, I'm not saying I win every single prospect I talk to. I don't, but I have a really high rate. And I'm sure the same is true for Tony. I'm sure the same is true for many other master sellers on here. We don't win them all, but we get a lot of them. And even when that's true, even if your proficiency is lower and you are here because you don't feel confident, what I want you to hear loud and clear is that I constantly have to self-coach and practice the things I'm sharing with you here because I'm still a human. And so this is really, pardon the expression, but this is really what separates the men from the boys. It's like, are you going to engage in the work that helps you advance where you want to go, and take responsibility for that and start to practice more so you capture your beliefs, you notice, you recognize the dissonance, you do all the things we've been talking about here? Or do you want to say, I just want to be good without having to practice? And everything that people are good at is because they've practiced. And unfortunately, it's like my kids with music lessons. It's like nobody loves playing the violin until they're pretty good at it. Before that, they sound terrible for a long time. And so everything worth doing is worth, it's worth doing well. You're going to have to practice to get there. And so I hope these have been some tools to help you with that. And if you want more, there's lots of ways, that I give other suggestions and ideas for that in that email. Dan, anything else that's come up?
Catherine, I think that about does it for today. Thank you so much for being with us. It's always a pleasure, Catherine. You're a shining star, and we love it. And you guys could look forward to the recording on the main menu, network in action. Why am I drawing a blank right now? What a great way
It's
to
under nationwide. It's under
member
nationwide.
benefits and then national virtual. And you
Yeah,
can see the
national
schedule every Wednesday of the month, except for the second. So the first, third, and fourth Wednesday of every month, we have our Network with the Nation, Sales Mastery, and our speaker series. I encourage you all to check that out. And you could also find a replay of today's wonderful meeting hosted by you, Catherine. Thank you again so much.
Thank you. Thanks all for the opportunity. Talk to you
All right.
later.
Be well. Bye.
Okay,
Thanks,
bye.
Catherine.
Bye. Thanks.